I want to pull up this tweet from Glenn Greenwald. Really interesting here. CNN admits something unbelievably embarrassing. Many in the media failed to report more on Biden's cognitive issues because they feared, quote, blowback from the White House and Democrats, or worse, age stories angered the White House and the liberal Twitter sphere the most. Wow. These people are in a cult, okay? They are so terrified to offend, they won't say it. Meanwhile, Donald Trump goes on stage at the Libertarian Convention and gets boos, jeers, and cheers, willing to accept that challenge. The media on the right has no problem calling out Trump. Even Laura Loomer, there is no bigger supporter of Donald Trump than Laura Loomer. Even she called out Trump over his immigration policy for college graduates. If Laura Loomer can instantly go on Twitter and say, I love Trump, but no way. And Democrats are like, well, we'd say things about Biden, which are painfully obvious, but the Democrats on Twitter will get mad at us. Mm-hmm. That is the world that y'all live in if you're following this media.
And they also,
what the hell is their job, though, at this point? If you're telling me that you're scared to report on the White House, why are you reporting on the White House?
They're not
because they get invited to the parties.
Yeah, they're just trying to get engagements and try to keep their overblown media companies afloat, right? They don't want anyone to say, you wrote something I don't like, so I'm not going to click on your website anymore. They need it to be something that people want to come back, and people don't want to read hard things.
I'll give a shout out to RFK Jr. We've criticized him several times, and he agreed to do a full show with us.
He's legit. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've actually criticized Trump quite a bit, though we are supporters of his, and he had no problem with a smile on his face. It was like, let's sit down, let's do a show, and more in the works. It is unsurprising to me that these individuals want to engage with those who have criticized them. It is, in fact, where you want to be. Joe Biden should be coming on shows like this because these are the people he needs to convince, but they won't do it. You know why? Because they know they can't.
Right. Well, they're going to put him on George Stephanopoulos this weekend. You know, the Clinton, political strategist. He was a top-level Clinton advisor back, when Bill Clinton was president. Always maintained a close relationship with them. Pretty much was Hillary's mouthpiece in 2016. That's the interview that they decided that they were going to do, pretty obviously after this disastrous debate. I think that airs this weekend or something like that. But
with many, many jump cuts to make it look like there's a rapid
they do it
discourse.
Every time. They put out a video from the White House, and if he's trying to say, a paragraph, there are 3 jump cuts in it. I mean, that's exactly how this interview is going to be too. Probably a little bit more well done to the point where it convinces the general public that it's not a jump cut.
It's wild to me that, we had Luke Rudkowski on the show, for instance, for a very long time. And many people in the audience accused Luke of having Trump derangement syndrome. And yet Trump supporters with smiles on their faces come in and sit down next to Luke and say, ask me anything. Mm-hmm. And now even Luke has tweeted, I'm voting for the felon over the other word.
It took him long enough.
My point is really simple. It's like Trump's people will gladly sit down and debate someone who doesn't agree with them, and they will have that conversation. That's it. Yep. You can criticize them, and they'll say, in fact, I tell you this, if I made a 2-hour show, just a list of everything that I thought Trump was wrong about, my email would be slammed with Trump supporters being like, let me come on the show and talk to you about this. Yep. The left is the opposite. They say, in this CNN article, the fear among these journalists is that if they report negative stuff, Karine Jean-Pierre is going to be like, we're not going to let you come to the White House anymore. They don't want anyone near them. It's an inversion.
That clearly works on some people, though.
Of course.
Right. But,
and it blows up in their faces.
You got to be a little bit fair to Joe Biden, though. I mean, he just did a really hard-hitting interview with Harry Sisson a couple of weeks ago. Oh, yeah, it was great. Asked him about his ice cream and whatnot. I mean, it was
good. What flavor ice cream?
It's a chocolate chip. That's the
chocolate chip.
It's double chocolate chip. Yeah, and I'm surprised
it's a man flavor.
It changed from vanilla bean. Within I don't know how that changed. So I guess he forgot. I don't know what happened there.
Everybody,
that's a scandal. Why is nobody reporting on this?
Everybody knows chocolate chip is the manliest of flavors because those chocolate chips are hard. And for someone like Joe Biden, whose teeth constantly fall out, it's a challenge to eat.
Suck it till it melts. I think not only are they afraid of not getting invited to the White House for things like But they're also afraid that the White House, if they criticize the president or his administration, that they're going to give him the Twitter treatment, that they're going to go in behind the scenes and be like, all right, CNN, no more funding from you for whatever we do surreptitiously behind the scenes. And that just indicates that the entire deep state Mockingbird media apparatus has turned on this administration, that they're allowing their two of their star reporters to criticize so openly and fervently, and which
I mean,
I see no other path than they're not going to get elected.
The White House, Karine Jean-Pierre, and also the chief spokesperson for the campaign had to be like, look, we know that was kind of a rough debate. I mean, it was so bad they acknowledged it instead of just trying to be like, no, of course he did great. He was stunned by all of the lies Donald Trump was saying. Like it was so bad. There was no way for them to play it off.
Well, they tried.
And that's critical.
They tried in the beginning. Well, Jill Biden
kind
did
of,
anyway.
right?
You did so good, Joe.
Oh, wow, that was so gross. You answered every question.
He's
You
sitting
knew
there
every fact. And he's like, that is crazy. That's the
There's
craziest
a video of him basically crying on stage. You see that?
No.
He really wanted to go home.
At the NC, I think so. He's probably really tired.
Yeah.
Jill's talking, and he's sitting there with his face just like this, like, and people were saying he was crying. And I'm like, he kind of looks like it.
I bet he's humiliated.
He doesn't want to do this. He does not want to do it. But you know, now they've got, obviously, the family at Camp David this weekend, you know, another leak that came out saying that they were all telling, keep fighting, Joe, keep fighting, Joe, keep fighting, Joe. That's what they were telling him. And now you've got Hunter Biden going around to White House meetings with him. Even to the point where his advisors are asking what the hell is happening. That's a quote from one of the advisors to, I believe it was the New York Times today. They did a report on that. Nobody knows why Hunter Biden is with him, but that's because, you know, Hunter Biden is basically they're being charged at this point to make sure nobody gets too close to Joe Biden to convince him to drop out. They're like guard dogs now.
Yeah, I've heard that Joe has been taking advice from Hunter, and Hunter's one of his most supporters that is saying don't drop out. He and Jill. Is that
He's
true?
the smartest man Joe knows. So
that's a quote from Joe Biden.
That's a quote from
smartest
Joe
man he knows.
Yeah.
Crack addict. So I don't know why. You know, that's sad, but that's weird. Like, I mean, they're probably afraid that if Joe doesn't get into power, the family's gonna get arrested and exposed and things like that.
I also think no one wants to go out in a moment of weakness, right? Like I assume on some level they just want to stay in power because of the benefits and the influence, whatever else. But also, I doubt that any of them wanted to be like, your dad was so senile and none of you would say anything. Like they want it to be on their terms, if at all. And really on their terms is 4 years from now.
So you're saying that they could potentially be trying to prop him up a little bit right now by doing these, like he did this speech yesterday, you know, where I'm sure he was practicing all day for it, you know, after the naps and such, where he comes out and, you know, tries to, you know, in his orange makeup.
Or even the rally right afterwards in North Carolina, right? And his campaign pointed to that, saying, oh, well, he was great then, so obviously it's crazy to even talk about the debate. Stop talking about it. I mean, they don't like that answer. But the reality is that when you're the president of the United States, the leader of any country, you are probably going to be under a tremendous amount of pressure. And there are probably a lot of moments where you are functioning on very little sleep, under a lot of stress, with a lot of personal issues going on. And you have to be performing at as close to the best as you can. And if that was Joe Biden's best, then I think all Democrats should sue their party because this is a terrible choice for them.
I think it was the worst debate performance of all time in American history.
I don't know. I'm sure there are some worse debates on lower
Presidential
level.
debate.
Maybe.
Televised presidential debate, I should clarify.
I mean, it was pretty rough, but I think the reality is that I think Biden wants to stay in office. I think his family wants him to stay in office. I think his advisors, if they had been smart, would have advised him to be a one-term president 2 years ago. And they're all going to have to go down with this ship because I just really don't think that they will, you know, gracefully exit. And there were a lot of states saying it's too late. He's on the ballot.
Yeah, but Biden, I think the only reason that Biden wants to continue on, if he does want to continue on, which I don't think that he does. That's just what I would say. But he doesn't want to be remembered as a one-term president because every one-term president that comes to mind, you know, you think of them as a failure. I mean, think Jimmy Carter.
He postured when he was running in 2020 that he was going to be a one-term president because he could honorably step aside for the next generation of Democratic leadership, which was presumably female and of color. And so theoretically, they have this moment this whole time to say, oh, no, we were always going to be a one-term president. Instead, they launched his reelection
Somebody
campaign.
at some point intervened and said, nope, that's not what we're doing. You know, you're going to keep going.
The Biden family.
Yeah,
the Biden family said,
exactly
we aren't leaving. No matter what we said to you when we were deal-making back in the day, we are staying in power.
And that's the point about Kamala Harris. they'll cut a deal with her and say, Kamala, here's what we're going to do. And she'll go, for sure. And then she's going to get up on stage and be like, 4 more years. And then they're going to go,
I don't know if you know this about politicians, but famously, you're not supposed to trust them.
Yeah. Well, but like, is it the deep state who is surprised they could not trust Joe Biden?
What do you mean trust him?
Well, I mean, the idea being that he's a one-term president. He's a placeholder. He's going to absorb the sins of the Democratic Party so they could reverse Trump's. They knew reversing Trump policy was going to cause damage to the country. They didn't want to absorb all that damage. So they send in Joe Biden, who's old and weak, have him do all of the policies that destroy everything, and they get him out. Then they bring in somebody else like Newsom.
Yeah, I think they wanted to trust him, and now they know they can't, and that's why they're letting their hounds loose. And I mean, like Anderson Cooper and Jake Tapper.
Or it's all the plan, man. It's all the plan.
Well, it's not that they don't trust him because he's basically a puppet at this point. In my mind, it's because he's not useful anymore because he can't win. So of course they'd want to use him for another 4 years, but they know that they can't. It's over. It's over for Joe Biden. He cannot win. Everybody knows that at this point.
And even if he's on the ballot, you said he's on the ballot in a lot of states already. I think even if he wins or gets that, then the DNC superdelegates can say, we choose Nick Sortor.
Isn't that sort of what they did to Bernie in 2016? Didn't they?
As far as I know, yes, I think so.
He couldn't win anyway because of the superdelegates. Even if he won the majority of states, he still
they were going to pick Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, they were going to pick Hillary one way or the other.
And I think is Bill a superdelegate? He was her own husband was one of the people that gets to choose. That is
based
nuts.
on nothing at all than who he wants to pick. He can pick anybody. He can pick absolutely anybody.
Do you know how many superdelegates there are? How many of them convene and collude?
I don't know off the top of my head. I know it's a huge portion of them.
I pray that my friends that consider themselves Democrats understand the danger of allowing a relatively small group of people to just select your candidate.
There's nothing democratic about the Democratic Party.
Oh, I know.
In name only, you might say.
Right, in name only.
Literally ironic that they would call themselves Democratic and work in such a fascistic way that they choose the candidate for you, even though you vote for somebody else. That's insane.
Well, that's what I'm wondering is, right, so we've gone through all these names about who would replace Biden, but with Gen Z supporting, like, just being so anti-Israel, would there be any Democrat that could even have a chance? Like, I think that's something we haven't talked about.
It's got to be somebody that hasn't talked about the issue right now. And I think, Trump has done pretty good, like, kind of staying away from that issue for the most part. He said a little bit more at the debate, but it was just so overshadowed by everything else that was going on with Biden that nobody's really talking about it. But I don't know. Does anybody even know what Gavin Newsom's stance on? Maybe he probably put out a supportive tweet for Israel at one point, but he hasn't been engaged in the issue.
Like a lot of Democrats, he's postured on both sides of the issues.
Exactly.
But that's actually not good enough for Democratic voters, which I find fascinating, right? And it's an age divide in the party. I think a lot of older Democrats are like, no, we have to be behind Israel 100%, and younger Democrats say, no, genocide, Palestine. You know what I mean? So the reality is, I don't know, especially 4 months out from the election, that there is an obvious contender, because I'm sure, how many of these protests were happening at the University of California campuses, right?
Some of the worst ones.
Some of the worst ones were in California, which means that Gavin Newsom had to respond to them, which I'm sure means that there are progressive activists that think he's awful and in bed with Israel and whatever else. And, this is something that I think there is not an easy way for anyone to navigate away from. And I think ultimately that's why the DNC will rely on scaring people, right? You can't let Trump be the one to pick the next Supreme Court nomination. I saw a post on social media where this girl was saying, I don't care if he's in a coma, I'm voting for Biden because it's about the staff that's behind him. And at that point, there's no reason to bring in a new face and trying to acclimate all of the voters to him. Like, if you just believe Biden's going to be there sort of in presence only, and that you're voting for the staff, you don't need them to swap out a candidate because you don't believe in it anyways.
I can't believe we're at that point where there are legitimately people that are being like, yeah, well, we don't know who's running the country, but they're probably decent people. They don't know, and they don't seem to care. It's just they've been told to hate Donald Trump. So they're going to continue hating Donald Trump. They can't really give you a reason.
Vote blue no matter who.
Vote blue no matter who. I was talking to my sister the other day, who is not involved in politics at all. She liked Joe Biden up until the debate. But now I'm like, so what is your biggest concern with President Trump? And she's like, oh, well, his Project 2025. That's the line that they're using at this point where, it's like, oh, well, Trump is he's going to come in and he's going to do all these. Project 2025 isn't even his platform.
What is it?
It's something that the Heritage Foundation put out.
Think tank drafted
just trying to
list
come
of
up with,
policy plans.
policies, and also hey, we'd like to staff this way. It's not that threatening. They have been because I'm so scared.
And it has nothing to do with Donald Trump at all. It's just a think tank putting it up. But the Democrats are using it as a scare tactic. So even people, if you get your news from TikTok, you think that this is all Joe Biden's plan or Donald Trump's plan.
That's all they got. Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.